Hello, we are recording uh, the plea mitigation for our professional practice course. Counsel, if you're ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. May it please Your Worship, I am Moses C. Ikai, and I appear before you for my client, Mr. Anwar, to make a plea in mitigation. Would Your Worship wish to be refreshed about the fact in the instant case?
No, thank you.
Okay. Your Worship, I understand my client has been charged contrary to the Theft Act 1968, Section 1, taking motor vehicle or other conveyance without authority. Conviction for such crime will lead to either a fine not exceeding £5,000 or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. As a matter of fact, Worship, I understand that the offending was during the period of conditional discharge, which means the starting point of the sentence of this starting point sentence of this offense will probably be imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. However, this is exactly the reason why I appear before you today. Now, with your worship's permission, may I start outlining the two submissions that I'm going to deliver?
You may.
Thank you, worship. My first submission is about the aggravating and mitigating factors of the present case, and my second submission is about my client's personal circumstances. Now, with your worship's permission, may I start my first submission?
You may.
Thank you, my worship. Before going to my submission, I would like to emphasize that my client takes full responsibility for his actions, that he recognizes and acknowledges the seriousness of the criminal offense that he has committed. It is true that the offense was committed during the period of the conditional discharge, which is undoubtedly the worst aspect of the case. But against this, I ask your worship to consider that it was not greed, but my client's eagerness to become an independent and self-sufficient young man, and drove him to it, and therefore should be distinguished from cases where someone merely looking for chances to sell the vehicle in return for cash to entertain oneself. I'll talk about this much in detail in my second submission. Also, the defendant did deliberately or recklessly take the risk of driving as he had never driven before. However, may I stress that, Your Worship, that no one was injured and the vehicle itself was not damaged at all. Therefore, the offense should fall on the lower end of the scale of seriousness. Besides, as testified by the defendant's uncle, the defendant felt very guilty that he couldn't fall asleep throughout the whole night. He even wrote a letter of apology in his daily diary, asking for Miss Seo's forgiveness. And when he was arrested, he cooperated fully with the police by making a plea of guilty and telling every details of the crime that he has committed. Now, Your Worship, taking the fact that the defendant is only 23 years old into account, I'm sure Your Worship could see the remorse showed by the young man. This is the end of my first submission. With Your Worship's permission, may I move to my second submission? Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, the background of the defendant. I'm sure that there is no need to remind your worship that fact that the defendant is indeed an orphan. Because of a traffic accident, his parents left him forever when he was 12 years old. The tragedy was unquestionably a fatal blow on the child, as he started isolating himself and becoming self-contempt. He then lived with his uncle, who has been suffering from a heart disease for more than 10 years, and owing to the poor health and financial conditions, his uncle could hardly spare time on teaching him nor afford the expense of better education. Hence, the young man lacks care, love, guidance, and stability from both the family and the society. Linking the background of the young man and the offense that he had committed, I sincerely believe that what the young man needs is care and help instead of blame and retribution. Secondly, the personality of the defendant. Your worship, as we both know, The only income that my defendant is receiving is indeed the job seeker's allowance, which is £40 per week. And even from this little amount of money, the defendant managed to give his uncle half of the amount per week on board, even though his uncle never required him to do so. I'm sure your worship could see how responsible is the defendant to the whole family, despite he is currently unemployed. However, the fact that he is unemployed doesn't mean he hasn't tried to be employed at all. Indeed, he has been actively attending free courses offered by the community that aims at enhancing job-seeking skills, and has been saving £5 per week for travel to job interview. Your worship, may I stress here, the defendant has trying to find a job every week. As testified by the defendant's uncle, he has suffered from minor depression as a result of continuous failure in locating a job. I'm sure your worship might wish to take into consideration on his eagerness to become an independent and self-sufficient young man. Your worship, this is pretty much the end of my submission. However, before I finish, I would like to suggest an appropriate sentence for my client. As I have mentioned before, what the defendant needs is care and help from the society to assist him in rebuilding social connections and making new friends, so as to overcome the traumas. The defendant also needs to be taught that in order to become a real independent person, he is not only required to be responsible for the family, but also for the whole society. And perhaps the most important thing is to facilitate the defendant's job-seeking process. To achieve this objective, your worship may feel it is appropriate to arrange a community service order for my client. I suggest my client to carry out 100 hours unpaid work for the community. This will help my client to get back to the society through communicating with others. More importantly, the skill that he acquires during the work will be useful in terms of looking for jobs. In an even better situation, he might be recruited right after serving the order, providing he could show enthusiasm and high-quality work. On the contrary, putting my client into jail will only make him becoming more passive and reluctant in socializing and support my client's career. Your worship, please believe me that destroying my client's future by putting him in prison is the last thing you want to pursue. Thank you.
I need to be doing that PC.